So welcome back to Conversate with Akeem D. Earl, and I'm here with Rukayatu Tijani.
Yes, kudos to you.
Off the first bat.
Look at
She's
you.
gonna kill me if I got this wrong. But
Maybe.
welcome to the podcast. How are you doing?
You know, I'm doing really well. I'm blessed and highly favored, you know.
Good.
It's a good day in California. Had my avocado for the day.
Right.
So, you know, I'm crunchy.
You got that good weather over there. We over here freezing in DC.
That's why I moved out west. That's
the right idea.
You know, because one thing I know about myself is agency. I don't got to be there.
It's a choice. You make decisions in life.
I don't have to be there. I went to Berkley. So the way my weather conscious is set up, I go with quinoa. I go wherever quinoa goes.
The oranges and banana. Now you're right.
And the kale, okay? Mason jars all day. Gang, gang.
Not the mason jars. All right, we gonna get to Berkley, but you said people call you Ruky, right? You said people call you
Ruky, like Rookie of the Year. Mm-hmm.
Did you make that shortening, or was like that's a family thing, or like what? Where's that?
So it's actually a common nickname with my name. So I'm of Nigerian heritage, first generation everything. My parents are from Niger, and my full name is Rukayatu Oluwabukola Funke Tijani, and my actual, Nigerian nickname is Ruky.
And what does Ruky mean?
So Ruky is just a nickname, but Rukayatu means gift from God. So, I try to be humble. I try to keep you humble now. But my name now, when people ask me, I say,
You're a gift from God.
I need to tell you something.
Just so they know. I
try, I can't be out here telling everybody. I can't about them too much. Okay.
I'm glad we got that down. So the official Conversate opening question is, if I was not an attorney, I would be a what? What would Ruky be?
I would be a singer.
There's a part of the show where we have all our guests sing, so this is perfect.
Don't know if I'll be doing that, but
I'm just
kidding. But no, I would be a singer. So I grew up in the choir. I'm a church girl. I'm a God girl. And one of the things I actually wrote my personal statement to law school on was being in the choir and being in the church and the complexities associated with that. Especially as it intersects with LGBTQI plus representation. But I loved the choir. Even now, as I'm a lawyer, I really make time to be a worship and praise leader. Like, it's something that is really meaningful to me. While I was studying for, the New York bar and the California bar, singing was my solace. Singing was the place that I went to when I needed to just simply decompress. So yeah, I would be a singer.
All right. What was your go-to solo? Was it like "Now Behold the Lamb"?
I actually did lead that song.
That's a tough song. That's a tough one.
I'm just,
That's a tough one.
How about listen? do you want me to? Like,
listen, we can get to it. I'm a church boy too, man. We can get to it. We can have a little worship session before we get
Don't do this, because I would be laid out and we would have no more podcasts. Because the way me and Jesus are, okay? Because when 2 or 3 are gathered together.
All we need is 2.
Don't do this. I'm a church girl for real. So I will wild out. So let's just keep it cute. Keep it cute.
Keep it calm. Let's get you crazy.
Okay.
So you chose not to sing, and where does the law come into play? Growing up in church, where does the law come into play?
Yeah, so I wanted to be a lawyer since I was 5 years old. Yeah, and I, as a running joke, I tell people, like, I'm Nigerian, I had no choice. But you are either a doctor, lawyer, engineer, or an embarrassment. So it was very much, I was like, okay, the law seems the easiest of all of that. No, but seriously, I wanted to be a lawyer ever since I was young and heard like the rudimentary version of Brown versus Board of Education, which, you know, really exposed me to Charles Hamilton Houston and Thurgood Marshall and the NAACP LTF. And I really had some really awesome kindergarten teachers, like people who were like really, really culturally centered and would read me books that were really focused on the Black and African American experience. So, you know, when I remember when I was younger, again at 5, like I remember like one day in kindergarten just saying, I'm going to be a doctor. And that didn't feel right in my shondo, you know, it didn't feel right in my spirit. I said,
right
you
here,
know what?
Right, it didn't hit right here.
We're not going to do that. That's not what God called us to. Okay. So then, so then, at the same time, you know, the next day I came into kindergarten. I was like, I'm going to be a lawyer. And for some reason that stuck. And you know, my fidelity, my allegiance to that career has really, been, you know, it stayed the test of time. And, you know, even despite the fact that I've wanted to quit several times because the legal field in terms of diversity is ghetto. So despite that, I still kept that. So it's, you know, God knew what he was doing when he spoke to that little 5-year-old girl.
Man, and it's crazy that you were able to process that even at 5 years old. And also that your teachers were able to introduce you to that. And we see what's going on with these book bannings in Florida and Texas where they're trying to withhold information. But you were
calling slaves interns. Okay.
So they worked for free. Like they chose to go to work. They clocked into slavery.
We trekked all the way from Africa. Just trekked.
Right. But the fact that they're trying to keep this away from students, but you said your teachers introduced you to these figures. How important was that being introduced at that young age?
I mean, it was really, really important because even though I think as I continued to grow and enter predominantly white spaces, it entered my subconscious. It was always a part of me to be part of a community that looked like me, to reflect in my day-to-day comings and goings, to reflect a community that looked like me, and to eventually speak on behalf of a community that looked like me. So I think that seed was planted very, very early on where, you know, it was something that I always had the opportunity to return back to, like the prodigal son. I always had the opportunity to return back to my community in a way that strengthened and alleviated some of the burdens that were associated with our shared experience, whether it was through diaspora or through, you know, first or second or third generation experiences.
So speaking of community, tell the people where you from, where you originally from.
Listen, the way I'm about to turn up, okay?
Let's go! Gang,
BK!
gang, gang!
BK all day,
Gang, 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 gang!
Yeah! Let me stop. Let me.
Live is one.
You didn't tell me I was supposed to be Timberlands to this.
No.
You didn't tell me I was supposed to be Timberlands to this podcast, sir.
Oh no, it's all good. You turn up or conversate. This is what we do.
Yeah, okay.
Especially from Brooklyn. Especially Brooklyn.
Gang, gang.
Yeah. All the sounds. All the sounds.
So, anyways, Sakbase, like all the Caribbeans.
All of it.
I just need to be on Belt Parkway right now.
Yo,
right
man,
now.
I miss the Belt.
I'm gonna just like throw a roti in your face, like just throw it, just throw it in your face. But no, seriously, I'm as you can probably tell. I am from Brooklyn, New York, born and raised. Don't do this anymore because I will get high. But from Brooklyn, New York, born and raised, you know, up until the age of 18, I went to school in Brooklyn. I lived in Brooklyn. I went to church in Brooklyn. Brooklyn was my stomping grounds, and particularly Coney Island. You know, a lot of y'all Brooklyn people, y'all sleep on the last train, on the last stop of that F train and of that D train. You know, I don't. So I'll give you a quick story. So like my dad lives on Staten Island. My mom lives in Coney Island.
Okay.
So I stayed with my dad last time I went to New York, and like I looked at that Google Maps, and I saw like on the train it would take 2 hours to get to Coney Island. I said, "Mom, we can zoom. Like we can." We don't
I
have
ain't
to
going
see each
over
other
there.
because the Bible says when 2 or 3 are gathered, and it doesn't make exceptions as to
for WebEx, for WebEx
Listen,
and Zoom.
I said it doesn't make exceptions. So you will see me ish. Okay.
Right,
It's like,
right. Ain't
so
going to 2 hours.
no, but eventually I was able to rent a car and get to her, which literally took
Good.
like 20 minutes. But that 2-hour train ride, I said, I am not equipped for that anymore. That's not my portion.
Right.
It's not my portion.
Like, growing up, you was like 2 hours is fine. You know, chilling with your friends.
Not only was 2 hours was fine, snow was fine. Snow was fine. Coldness was fine.
Yeah.
I live in California now for a reason.
Your body has changed.
My body was just like, what is
to
this?
a whole new area.
What is this white substance that you are? Is this crack?
This white cold.
Is this cocaine? What is this?
Is the crack era still going around? What's going on?
Is this
over
crack?
there?
Like, what is this? What? You live in the suburbs now. What is this, Ruky? You know you.
God.
Your credit score is too high for this. Your credit score is too high for this.
Oh my God.
Okay, let's roll.
Yeah. So how did you growing up in Brooklyn shape who you are when you went to California and when you went to Berkeley, all these different places? Like, how did Brooklyn stay with you?
So I think the primary way is I almost always, when people ask me where I'm from, I never say New York. I say Brooklyn, right? So I think it's a sense of pride. It's a sense of determination. I think Brooklyn, the hustle and bustle of it, the coldness of it, sometimes the roughness of it, really built in me a tenacity and determination that makes me who I am today. I had an interview a few years ago where somebody asked me, what was it about Brooklyn that really built who you are? And I said, Brooklyn allowed me to have really good discernment when it comes to being a lawyer. When you grow up in a neighborhood where, depending on what colors you wear, you can either be alive or, not be alive. You start to build really good discernment and you start to understand the importance of choosing certain battles, having certain arguments. So to be able to really have, and I don't think a lot of people articulated it like this, which is really important, particularly for first generation professionals, to be able to have experiences that built in you a level of discernment and really good judgment when it comes to determination, tenacity, knowing how to navigate different spaces, knowing how to navigate different personalities. I learned all of that in the projects of Brooklyn, New York. No,
facts. I don't think people realize how bad it was for real. Like, I used to be a counselor at day camp for the church I was telling you about. And I was even a student at day camp. Depending on which park we were going to, we had to wear a certain color.
Absolutely.
So we had to put on the blue shirts if you're going to the Crip neighborhood. and
we weren't on an email list. Like, nobody was out here telling you, hey guys, hope you're well. It's time to wear red today.
Yo, and
it's time
we
to wear
had
blue
no
today.
clue as children why we were wearing this color. But the whole time it was for our safety. I was like,
and God forbid you out there gallivanting throughout the streets on Halloween.
Bro,
so like,
it was bad. People don't recognize how bad.
Yeah, it was.
Email.
We didn't have a group chat. So it wasn't as if it wasn't as if no one was like, I wasn't like Gmail where, so I wasn't being a part. I wasn't a part of, a huge community. You just had to know this and keep your head down and keep your ear to the ground and understand, okay, what was going on? What's going on? Okay, everybody's wearing this today. Everybody's wearing purple, being agnostic. So so being able to really get that judgment was something that definitely took me far in my legal career.
That's real. And it's facts. And like I told you, I'm only a year in, but understanding like the politics in law offices and like you said, dealing with personalities, I didn't realize how much I was going to have to deal with it, how much I was going to have to navigate, especially as a Black man with locks and tattoos and like having to go through all that. Like, it's real.
Yeah.
So you say you left Brooklyn at 18 years old. Where did you go when you left Brooklyn at 18 years old?
So I went to University at Albany. So I went upstate. I went upstate.
You want to do CUNY? You want to do John Jay? No Baruch?
No shade to that.
Yeah, no
But,
shade, no shade.
and no shade, obviously, because I actually know like amazingly smart people who went to John Jay. If, the word on the street in Brooklyn was if you wanted to be a lawyer or in the criminal justice system, then John Jay was definitely the school to go to.
Yep.
And then Baruch is just like mass smart, like people who are brilliant. So really great CUNY schools. But I knew that there was a world bigger than where I was.
Yeah.
And I knew that going to a place that was very much outside of my comfort zone was going to be important to my growth. And honestly, Akeem, I didn't know what I didn't know about the college application process. Like I did really, really, really well in high school. And I remember this one instance where I went to Murrow. So it was a very, very diverse, high school in Brooklyn, New York. In smack dab in the middle of a really Hasidic Orthodox Jewish neighborhood. And so I had a lot of diverse classmates and all that stuff. And I had a really amazing GPA. Like you're talking about 97, 98 GPA. And I remember going to my counselor, my college counselor, and them telling me that my only options were an HBCU or CUNY. Despite the fact that like I was
top of your class.
Yeah, top of my class. And I remember a classmate who I did better than, she happened to be white. She ended up getting accepted into NYU. And it was from my freshman year moving forward that I realized the okie doke. And I was like, oh, y'all really out here telling young Black kids that the best you can be is like a janitor or something. So while I, enjoyed my time in SUNY Albany and I loved it and I appreciated it, a part of me always like really thought I could make it to these Ivies. I can make it to these schools if I have the right conversations and if I have the right connections. So yeah, SUNY definitely amazing, system, amazing school, and it accommodated me particularly when I didn't know what I didn't know.
Yeah. But the fact that you didn't have all the options laid out. Like
yeah, absolutely. Like I didn't even apply to a Columbia or Harvard or a NYU or Cornell. Like I didn't apply because it wasn't like my mom, single mom struggling. So she wasn't out. She didn't necessarily have all the time in the world to help to help me get into these schools, much less know about the application processes that it came to regarding these schools. So my only sources were my white college counselors who saw me and saw HBCU or a community college, which is such a drastic like dichotomy because like what? Like how dare you put HBCUs? Like just the idea that like considering the diversity of HBCUs, like you have a Spelman, you have a Clark Atlanta, you have all of these dynamic HBCUs, a Howard, Hampton, whatever the real HU is, depending on who's listening right now. But like you have these amazing institutions, and to essentially act as if you're relegating me to these spaces, it turns me off. So I didn't even apply to HBCUs because of the very tone of this counselor.
Even though you didn't even know what
even though I'm Nigerian, so I didn't grow up watching The Different Worlds quite yet. So I didn't really I wasn't really in the know when it came to the beautiful culture that encompasses HBCUs. So at that point it just felt like a very shady comment, and I carried it for a very, very long time.
What was the moment you felt like things shifted? What was the experience that things changed?
So I have one of my closest friends, and I'll just name her out right now. Like I will rep her all day, every day. Her name is Khadijah Robinson. And Khadijah she's one of the most brilliant people that I know. So I happened to, prior to going to law school, I happened to be in a program called the TRIOS program, which is actually an acronym. It stands for Training and Recruitment Initiative for Admission into Leading Law Schools. And it's an initiative between Harvard Law School and my Law School and the Advantage Testing Foundation. And they take about 20 students a year. They train them in the LSAT, and their goal is to get them into top 10 schools, or top 5.
This is during undergrad.
This is during it. Yeah, it's not necessarily for people who are in undergrad, but it's people who had not yet gone to law school and are interested in going to law school.
Okay.
So I met Khadija during this program. Mm-hmm. And Khadija, you think I'm funny. She's like more hilarious than me, mm-hmm. more colorful than me, just such a dynamic, beautiful spirit. And she's also wicked smart, like crazy smart, like homegirl, easily 170s. LSAT, 170s, like just what?
It's like we're in her sleep. Like
this is just what you do, like 90% percentile. Yeah. And she went to Spelman, and she went to Spelman, and she was from the South, and that immediately like just sucker punched all of my stereotypical notions about HBCUs and Southern folks, because especially when you grow up in like, a Nigerian culture, it's impressed upon you, this idea about who African Americans are or people from the South. But she sucker punched any notion that I had the audacity to have about people from HBCUs or people from the South. And she ended up going to Harvard for law school, because obviously, and and to this day, she's still one of my closest friends, and she is hands down one of the most brilliant people I know. And to shout her out, she ended up like after graduating from Harvard, did a clerkship, did time at Covington and Berlin, and then started a startup that was later acquired by Diddy.
Sheesh.
So it's like,
wow,
she's forever.
Yeah,
she's constantly gonna.
She's goated.
I'm not gonna mess that friendship up. It's like, girl,
keep that close.
Let me. When's your birthday again? Let me go ahead and send you a quick gift so you remember me when you get a Nobel Peace Prize, so you can go ahead and invite me to that meeting.
Right. And that's why exposure is so necessary, because you didn't know something, somebody exposed you to who they were, and that changed your entire world.
Yeah,
you wouldn't have able to have that experience or that information if you didn't meet her. So law students who are now in a position where they don't feel like they're able to accomplish something or do something, they're able to hear your story and be like, oh no, I'm exposed to something new now. Like, oh, it's actually possible. It's a whole new arena. Like,
absolutely.
So important. So important.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So you had your experience at Albany. What made you choose the law school you went to?
So during my first year at SUNY Albany, I was exposed to a pre-law program in Santa Clara.
Okay.
So I had a really, really good mentor in undergrad. Her name was Sabrina or Selena. My bad, girl. I'm gonna go back to my phone. But anyways,
she'll forgive you.
Delete that. But I had a really, really her name is Selena. I know that. I gotta selfie with her. So her name ish. So her name. So anyways, she during my first few months at SUNY Albany, she brought me to a pre-law forum and a pre-law fair, where in my first year as an undergraduate student, I was exposed to Stanford and Berkeley and Harvard and Columbia and Yale and NYU and Cornell and all of these schools. And oftentimes when you go to these fairs, you see, their papers, their publications at the desk, and you see what the minimum GPA is. So at schools like Berkeley and Stanford and Harvard, the minimum GPA was like 3.7, 3.8. And the seed was planted in my mind from that moment. Like first semester college, I said, oh, I can do that. Every semester, with the exception of one, I got a 4.0. every single semester. Because I was like, oh, I can do that. Like just that seed that was planted. I was like, oh, I can do that. So, but even before then, when I went to, I don't recall, I don't specifically recall how was I, no, I do. So my first semester of undergrad, I went to the university library, sat at the computer, and just started Googling like pre-law programs. I was just like, there has to be something out there. I don't know what I don't know. I don't know what it is. And again, going back to just this sense of retribution that was built up inside of me from my college counselor telling me like what I was relegated to. I just felt like I needed to know this information. So I started Googling pre-law programs, and I happened to come across the pre-law undergraduate scholarship program, also known as PLUS, which I believe is an initiative at the time that was sponsored by LSAC, which is the Law School Admissions Council, which is the same council that also, regulates a lot of the law school admissions or application processes. They may give you waivers for certain law schools and the like. So I saw that there was a PLUS program at Santa Clara Law School. I had never been to California. I never even thought of going to California. I applied and I got in. So I ended up going to California during the summer of my during the summer after my first year of undergrad. And and the and the dean, it was actually one of the deans of the law school. Her name is Jeanette Lynch, Black woman, and she welcomed me with open arms. She picked me up at the airport. She brought I happened to go to I actually arrived to the law school early. I think I arrived like July 3rd or July 4th. And she invited me to sit with her family and eat barbecue. And
was it good food?
Yes, it was. Amen. I wouldn't be in California if it wasn't. So yeah, no, and so the welcome that I received really solidified. Like I remember in that moment thinking, oh, I can do California. I can do this. This is amazing. This is dynamic. And then in the Santa Clara program, we were on the campus. And if you know anything about Santa Clara Law School, it is stunning. It is a stunning, beautiful campus. So to spend the summer there and to be exposed to law school professors and to expose to the LSAT and exposed to all of these different programs just solidified in my mind, oh, I'm coming to law school in California. That's what we do. We go together now. Me and Callie go together now. That's what we do. No turning back. So so that was initially what exposed me to California and ultimately made me choose Berkeley as my law school.
And before then, you didn't even know like how to get to California. You know how long it took to get there.
Absolutely not.
How much a plane ticket cost.
I was like, what is this? Cali, New York, that's
that's it. That's all
we know. That's all we know.
Yeah, man. So how were you able to like? I guess so. You knew all through undergrad, like I want to get to law school. Like, how patient were you? Were you like the whole time like I just want to get this undergrad over it? I need to get to law school. Or were you able to be present and be like, I'm gonna enjoy this process?
So law school was always the goal. I think it was in undergrad that I experienced or that I realized that I had significant anxiety in general, but particularly around law school. I worked really, really, really hard in undergrad. Like, you don't get a 4.0 just by showing up. Like, I worked really hard. I didn't take part of a lot of extracurricular activities, with the exception of like step team, because I loved being in the step team. That was like what kept me grounded. I was in the gospel choir, so those things kept me grounded. But a lot of what I did, I wouldn't necessarily say was centered towards law school, because my interests, again, from 5 years old, just happened to align with that of law school. So from my sophomore year, I interned at the New York State Senate. I interned at the Senate twice.
Nice.
including interning for the Speaker of the House, the Speaker of the Senate. So Andrea Stewart Cousins. So one of the things I appreciate about Albany is that it does really expose you to the inner workings of the capital of one of the greatest states in the country, of New York. So I had a real opportunity from my experience in undergrad to really just understand the intricacies of politics and also to find myself. So my freshman year, initially I double majored in political science and drama because I really thought I was about to begin an Oscar or something. And yeah, drama, and it was that failed experience that that gave me a huge appreciation for people in the dramatic arts. And I love drama. I can act like nobody's business. But when you talk about the art of it, the actual study of it, like
you
really
didn't feel like you could take the dedication you had for law to drama?
I really thought I did until I got a D on my first midterm, and I said, you know what? This is not. Midterm? I still don't remember it. It's that traumatic. I need to unpack
like a
that.
Monologue? You got a D on a monologue?
I don't know what I need to unpack that with. Like it was like understanding different. I don't even remember. It was whatever. I got a D, and I said, you know what? There's still time to drop out of this major. So what we're going to do is... I'm not going to be
Angela Bassett. It's not going to happen.
No, absolutely not. What we're going to do is switch this up. I said, we're going to switch this up. We're going to go ahead and figure some things out.
Right.
You don't actually have to have drama at all. Like you can go, you can have political science. So I have political science, and I really resonated with that. I really loved political science. I loved philosophy. I loved learning about Henry David Thoreau and Socrates and, you know, and all of these amazing scholars. And a classmate actually introduced me to Africana Studies and said, hey, there's this really popular class that's going on. It's called Intro to African American Studies. I think you should take it. And I took it and I fell in love. I fell in love. I fell in love with us. I fell in love with our people. I fell in love with our history. I fell in love with just understanding that, like, even as a Nigerian American, there was but so much that I learned about my culture. I fell in love with just understanding that there was more to us than what society was teaching us, right? And after my first semester, I actually studied abroad in Ghana. So I went to Ghana, West Africa.
Undergrad. You had a great undergrad. That's fine.
I went to Ghana, West Africa.
That was the second semester, or was it third semester?
It was between the first and second semester. Like I went hard. When I fell in love with something, I went hard. So it was like winter semester-ish, right? So right between fall and spring. And I ended up going to Ghana, West Africa. And I ended up just spending time navigating the slave castles, Camino Castle, you know, Cape Coast Castle, like just these understanding the history of us as a people. And that solidified a lot of how hard I went for the rest of my undergraduate career.
Man. So you said you had some anxiety during undergrad. Was that anxiety about like the profession in general? If you were even going to get into law school, what was that anxiety about?
So to be honest, I don't recall having anxiety until I started studying for the LSAT. And because undergraduate, like I enjoyed school. I enjoyed, like, yes, it was a challenge. Yes, it was hard, but I really enjoyed, you know, just being able to learn about all of these different subject matters that I hadn't been exposed to. But when it came to the LSAT, I remember just feeling so overwhelmed by all of the stats around the likelihood of people who look like me getting a high score, or people who look like me getting into a Harvard or a Berkeley or Stanford or what have you. And just, I remember studying for the LSAT, like taking a practice test like 3 times a week, and almost before almost every test, just like throwing up and just feeling like, oh my God, this is like, I can't take this.
Yeah.
So that was the first introduction to what would be a long companionship with debilitating anxiety. And the work that needed to be done to really understand who I was and whose I was, even with this anxiety.
Man, I feel that. I feel like the goal, for me, the goal was always to go to law school, and it was always like this big, huge mountain in my mind. Like, oh yeah, I want to be a lawyer, but like this is the mountain you to get over to do that. But until you come face to face with it, you get them LSAT books, you see those problems, you see all these different things that you just have to learn. All of a sudden, there was no resources in high school. There was no resources that your parents could afford to even introduce you to this thing. And now you're faced with this huge mountain and having to figure it out, like you said, on your own. No, that's real. And what do you remember what you got on your LSAT? People don't usually remember what.
I got a 157.
Killed it.
Ish.
Good. It's higher than mine.
My LSAT, my practice LSATs were like in the 160s, like 160s. There was one time I got a 168, and I thought, I was like,
I'm here.
You can't touch me. So like,
we here now. We
here. Like, don't nobody need to study no more. But I did need to continue studying. But suffice to say, I got a 157. But it was, and I remember just feeling kind of bad about that, because the program that I was in at Harvard and NYU, they were telling you it's like at least 160 or bust.
Right.
So I remember my mentor at the time was just telling me, oh, you need to take this over. And remember, I was throwing up like so much virtually before every exam. So I was like, I don't know if I can undergo that anymore. So I ended up just like making a deal with him. And I said, listen, I'm still an undergrad. I plan on going straight to law school. So like, I'm not taking a break. So if for whatever reason I don't get into like, a top 10 or top 5, I will take the LSAT again and we'll figure it out. So because of that deal that I made with my mentor, I said, okay, we gotta be out here hoeing in these law school streets, because okay, that was inappropriate. But I went to a lot more fairs. I networked with a lot of recruiters and counselors. And I also dug deep, really, really deep into the law school admissions process. I remember reading a book all about personal statements and really understanding, okay, how do you craft a really, really, really good personal statement? What does an addendum look like? I remembered realizing that while the personal statements were limited generally to 2 pages, the letters of recommendation were not limited. So I went to my professors and I was like, I need you to say that I was the best student in your life.
Let me write this for you.
I'm gonna
send you a template.
If only ChatGPT existed
just
at that
your name
moment.
At the bottom.
If only ChatGPT. I was like, I got you. But I remember going to my professors and saying, I need you to essentially say, I was the best student that you have ever seen in your life. And I had some professors. I remember there was one professor. He wrote like a 6-page recommendation letter.
Damn.
And I was like, go ahead and throw that in. Throw this in. Throw that in.
That works.
Right? And he had no problem. And because it was in fact true. He said, in my 23 years as a science, because he was a science professor, science was not mine. And I was like, I'm about to kill this class. So he said, in my 23 years as a professor, no one has gotten a higher score than Rukayatu Tijani. And I said, that's what I'm talking about. And I went to him and I said, you doing good. You loyal.
He's kind, you smart, you important.
You loyal. Let me DJ college. DJ college you. No, but seriously. So I, knowing that, okay, I had my LSAT score. That's what I had. I figured out that if every other part of my application was pretty much perfect, that I would get into amazing schools. And even then, I didn't know. Like, I really didn't know. I remember during my law school admissions process, a lot of people getting into, the local law schools, Albany Law, some SUNY law schools, some New York law schools, and just feeling like, oh my God, I honestly don't think I'm going to get into a law school. But my first acceptance was Berkeley. My first acceptance. And I remember calling my mentor and like we were looking at the email and I was like, is this real? Like, what is this? Like, and then after that, the other top 10s, top 20s started rolling in. Michigan, Cornell, Georgetown, like all of these schools. And they were giving me, and UVA, University of Virginia, they were giving me money. And I was like, okay, all right, let's go ahead and hustle. Let's go ahead and pit these people against each other who gonna get us the highest scholarship.
They gave me 40. What you gonna do?
Yeah,
What
period.
you gonna do
So
now?
like it was such a amazing experience in the sense that I was able to see that a lot of schools saw more than a number and saw that I could really make a contribution to the student body and to the law school, even if my quote unquote LSAT score did not fit the median. Right. So that was another really, really big lesson for me in understanding how I could still show up and essentially show out, even if I wasn't 100% perfect.
Yeah. Because I know there's a lot of undergrads or pre-law people going through that same anxiety right now. It's like, oh, is my application good enough? Feeling like, oh, it might be too high, it might be too low, yada yada yada. And it's like, no, it's the compilation of your entire application that matters. It's everything that who you are, your personal statement, your letters of recommendation. Those things can boost where your LSAT is lacking, or if your GPA is lacking, or whatever it is. Like those things can complement each other.
And honestly, you would want to go to a law school like that. Like the legal
Exactly, yeah.
field is not an easy space to navigate. There still is pervasive discrimination, abysmal levels of diversity. So to when I went to Berkeley, I loved the fact that it was so social justice oriented. Like some of my favorite professors, Professor Russell K. Robinson, who clerked for Judge Breyer, and, Professor Murray, who's just like Beyonce in my head, and and Professor Fred Smith, who clerked for Justice Sotomayor, like all of these amazing African American professors who also were crazy brilliant, but also supported me and nurtured me and poured into me in ways that I didn't know I needed. I still remember to this day, I was studying for the New York bar after I graduated from Berkeley. And we can talk, I know you have a question about that, so we'll talk more about that experience, but it was probably the hardest experience of my life, not because of the bar, but because of how life just lifed during that time. Life was just ghetto.
Life goes on. The bar don't care what's going on in your life.
Lifing. It was it was like, oh, we got you, girl. We got you, fam. We about to mess your stuff up. So like, and I remember going to Professor Murray, like one day I saw her, and if you don't know about Professor Melissa Murray, she's that girl. Like she was the first Black woman dean of Berkeley Law School. She, I believe she's at NYU or Columbia right now, but she clerked for, Sotomayor. She went to UVA and Yale. Like she's just, and she goes to Beyonce concerts. So she's like my girl. She's that girl. she's that girl. Like she's who I want to be when I grow up. So like I remember one day I was like walking disheveled through the halls of Berkeley while I was studying for the bar, and I went to her, and no, she just happened to see me, and I just like broke down crying because I was like, I can't do this.
Wow.
I can't do this. And she brought me to her office, And she was like, girl, you need a nap. Like just like a Black mama would. She was like,
Go lay down.
She's like, go lay down. Here's some ginger ale. Like, here's some crackers. Like,
here's some tea.
Here's some tea. Like, but no, seriously, like it takes a lot of cultural competence to understand that, to just know, okay, this girl is just like exhausted. Like, she don't need a Coach Carter moment. She don't need to be told like, you was smart, you was kind. Like, she just needs to like literally take a nap. So she brought me to her office. She sat me on her couch and she was like, go to sleep. And I went to sleep. And I woke up and, I ended up passing, long story short, I ended up passing the New York bar, later on passed the California bar, first try, each
hardest
one.
bars, you just passed the hardest bars in the country.
Period. So like, you're New York, you're
BK.
all day, every day. So, but that was largely attributed to, the largely nurturing experience that I had at Berkeley. Even like another one of my favorite professors, Ty Alper, he's one of the deans of Berkeley. He's the head of the death penalty clinic at Berkeley. He was the one that I traveled with to the Deep South to do death penalty work. And he consistently stayed by my side. So like, it was, so to people who are applying to law school now, I really hope that you look at schools not simply for what it can get you, but what that 3-year experience will look like. Because it's so important to feel like you belong. And I know that's few and far between, just considering the legal field. Like, there's still times that I didn't feel like I belonged at Berkeley. But the reason why I contribute as an alumni, I give money, I go back and I talk, is because of just the amazing and nurturing experience I had when I was a student there.
No, that's very important to care about that experience. Like you said, not just care about, oh, I'm gonna get this job if I go to Harvard. I'm gonna get this clerkship but like, no, what is the community like? What are those professors like?
Absolutely.
What would you say was a harder process? Was it the LSAT or was it the bar?
LSAT.
The LSAT was a harder process than the bar. Wow.
It's interesting. And I know I said that like right off the cuff, but I think it was a mindset shift. I think that I was really, really battling with the narrative that I subconsciously subscribed to when I was taking the LSAT. The narrative that I wasn't good enough, that Black people don't do well on the LSAT, that, Black people just don't go to top law schools, that, oh, I'm a girl from the projects. What do I have? Like, the audacity of me thinking I could get into a Berkeley or Harvard or Stanford or NYU. What? So like, I was battling so much more than just simply the LSAT. That it felt insurmountable. Whereas when I was taking the bar, mind you, I did really well in law school. Like, I ended up, by the time I took the bar, I was the only Black woman student who got a federal clerkship. Wow. Which, is like really, really a big deal. And I ended up clerking for an Obama appointed federal judge. Nice. I ended up sitting on all these committees. I was part of the law school admissions committee. I was part of the clerkship committee. I was giving all these presentations. So there was this, I got like really high grades in a lot of the law school classes that I loved and appreciated. So like, by that point, your girl kind of knew who she was. I was like, okay, bar, what's up? And also, like, as a God girl, I'd be remiss if I failed to mention this. I really had a closer relationship with God. Yeah. Like, I started to become more mature in my spiritual journey. Yeah. So this idea that, like, this idea that God would bring me all the way through law school just to fail at this pivotal point, it didn't make
this far
sense to me. He didn't bring me this far to just get me this far. At that point, despite how hard it was studying for the New York bar, and I would even say that it was probably harder to study for the bars that I did than to study for the LSAT. It was a mindset shift. It was a mindset shift that really helped me navigate life in taking the bar exams than I ever could have done for the LSAT.
Man, Man, we about to go back to church that we almost
I'm
didn't
just
have
saying.
in the beginning. we might just be in church by the end of this thing. Oh man, that's so good.
Maybe.
No, it's fact, because listen, if you ain't depend on God before law school, you definitely gonna need to depend on him in law school.
Out here looking crazy.
Your mind, not for because your mind
walking around law schools
crazy.
like you know, like you about to have them walls come tumbling down. Like just
for real. Plead the blood, splatter some oil on the walls like you had to, because like
may
you
or may
really
not
go
have
crazy
put
in
oil
there.
on some law school journal doors. Amen. Like may or may not have. Allegedly.
That's real.
Allegedly.
It's so crazy that the difference in how well you did or how well you think you did was just your mindset, how much you believe in yourself, what you told yourself about yourself. Like
absolutely.
you said, about who you are and whose you are. And that's
absolutely.
so amazing, because you would think like, oh no, it was easier or harder because of the type of questions or how hard the study process was. Like, no, how much you believe in yourself and what you tell yourself on a daily basis.
Absolutely.
It's so much a part of the process of
not only what you believe about yourself, but who you surround yourself by.
Yep. Good.
So at the point that I started studying for the California bar, I had already finished my clerkship and I had gotten into one of the top litigation firms in the country. So the prerequisite of staying there was to pass the California bar.
Yeah.
And I remember around the time hearing from people, including my then current therapist, oh, it's okay if you don't pass. Oh, it's okay if you don't. And I was just like,
that's an option.
Wait.
Don't put those seeds in my head.
What?
Yeah.
And it wasn't even like passing is not an option. It was just like, I'm gonna pass. Like it just wasn't, it didn't even strike me as like, I didn't even have the capacity to think of it as not an option to assume it was an option. Like it just was like, I'm gonna pass. Like I'm going to pass this.
It's happening.
And you need to go because you acting crazy, you talking crazy.
I'm no longer paying you by the hour.
No longer. There's other therapists on my insurance. Like
I got Blue Cross. There's other therapists.
I actually did have Blue Cross, but like actually did Blue Cross for the win.
Right. Shout out to Blue Cross.
Period. But seriously, like I really, really, really like realized because by that point I realized this is a mindset thing. Like I really had to tell myself, oh, I deserve this. I remember studying for the California bar and having to review the rule against perpetuities, which actually was my jam. I'm not gonna lie.
It's from the pits of hell, man.
I love it. First of all, don't you dare talk about that, okay? Like, don't you dare talk about that rule against perpetuities, because that's spirit led and Holy Ghost driven.
I don't care what vest after 21 years or not.
That's 21 years after the death of the life. Come on. You say it with me. 21 years after the death. No? Okay. No, King? Okay. Of the last nigga who died. Of the last, okay. No? That's not what we're going to do?
It's not even a law no more. It don't even matter no more.
Well,
it's not even a thing no more.
It built something in me, Akeem. It built something in me. That's the point. But I'm saying this to say, I was studying something around property, and I didn't get it that day. I just didn't get it. Like, studying for the bar. And I remember after that, like, walking around, and I was in the Silicon Valley, you know, representing all these huge tech companies. All I had to do was pass the bar. And that was a really difficult day for me because I did not understand anything. And the practice test I wasn't doing that well on. And I got really, really scared and shaken. And I remember closing my book, putting my sneakers on, walking around my apartment complex like it was the walls of Jericho, and just saying to myself, I'm a California bar attorney. I'm a California bar attorney. I'm a California bar, just walking. And like, long story short, I ended up passing the California bar. But I remember at the time I passed
First time,
February bar too. And I remember passing it. But okay, so I passed it. Great. Yeah. Cool. But like a lot of the law firm partners at the firm I worked at sent me like this article, and they were like, do you understand that this is like history? And I was like, what are you talking about? So apparently the bar that I passed had the lowest pass rate in 30 years.
What year was this?
It was 2017, 2018.
Wow.
It had a 27% passage rate.
Wow.
And not only did I pass the bar, I finished the bar early. I remember chilling. I was like, oh, let's correct these spellings. Like, just like, because I knew that greater is he who is in me than he who's in the world.
Yep.
So I was like, if you call me
exceedingly, not abundantly more than you'll even ask or think.
Don't do this.
I'm not going to let you pass the bar.
Shut up. Don't do this.
You will exceed abundance, more, records and percentages and all that.
What is the percentage in the kingdom? What is the percentage in the kingdom? In the kingdom. What is that?
That's facts, though. That's facts.
What is the percentage in the kingdom?
Man.
What is a bar in the kingdom?
Nothing. Not a thing.
Tell you yes or no.
What is the MPT? What is the MPT?
You yes or no. That's all you have to. That's the only question you have to answer.
Ain't no multiple choice past the pearly gates.
There's no multiple choice when you're in ministry. When you're in ministry. What is the multiple choice question?
No, nothing. No, man. No, not at all.
You can't.
Facts. You worried about passing. God was like, I'm gonna do way more than that, sister. I'm gonna do way more than that.
You worried about passing? I gave you the passage. Jeremiah 29:11. I know the plans I have for you. Plans to prosper you.
Come on. I knew you in the womb.
Next question. Let's not do this.
Womb, I knew you. You was gonna be passing the ball.
I knew you. Jeremiah 1:5. I knew you. In your mother's womb, I set you apart.
Yo,
listen, I'm a God girl for real. Don't do this, Akeem.
All my children shall be taught by the Lord, and great shall be the. Come on, man. That was my mom's verse that she got when I was in the womb.
The overwhelming, reckless love of God. Listen.
On the timestamp, or you?
I will not call this church.
Start. Church.
If you keep on having me going, Chandler Moore will enter this room.
No.
Maverick City will enter this room.
No, it's factual because people need to understand what really made us get through. It wasn't nothing on our own doing. It wasn't our own strength. What? It was our own strength. It was God who brought us through, man. And he gets the glory at the end of the day. At the end of the day, he gets the glory.
All of the glory belongs to him.
And that's facts. So, the transition, we take a little...
Got me started.
Transition.
I'm trying to keep a cute and code switch. You got me started.
Yo, so bar exam horror story. Give me a bar exam horror story. You're taking the California and New York bar. Oh my goodness. When did you take each? When did you take each one? Like, what was the separation? So
the New York bar I took in 2014 after I graduated from Berkeley, and the California bar I took in 2017, 2018. Like, I think I took it in February 2018, after I finished my federal clerkship. So,
so bar exam horror story from each one, if you have one.
So the New York bar, again, it wasn't difficult because of the bar itself. So at the time, so when I had graduated from Berkeley, I had my family there, all that great stuff. And then a few weeks later, it was time to study for the bar. I had subleased from a person whose roommate ended up snitching on me. So apparently subleasing wasn't allowed
in that building. Okay.
On campus, I guess, whatever. Okay. So homegirl snitched, and
just because it don't take no money out of her pocket, she not living with you, she just snitched.
So
oh Lord,
let me tell you how much God still had to work on me in that moment, because the way I low-key rolled up on her,
Brooklyn came out.
Listen, like, that's when I knew I had to do some work on myself, because the way I was like, oh, so you really about like, I kind of got up in her face. Mind you, I had just graduated from Berkeley Law School.
Right.
Distinguished. All up in this woman's face. To the point that, like, after she ended up telling the manager of the building that I had threatened her. I didn't threaten her, but I'm just black, right? So I ain't threatening her. And so I ended up having to humble myself while I was studying for the bar. First of all, I got kicked out of the apartment complex. I was homeless. For those 2 months. Around the same time, I started experiencing some really, really significant chest pains. Um, not knowing what it was. I ended up going to the hospital while studying for the bar, having morphine pumped into me, and a doctor telling me that I might have lupus while homeless, while studying for the bar. On top of that, my laptop broke twice. Took it to Best Buy twice, broke. Ended up borrowing a laptop of one of my law school professors to go to New York. So she trusted me to travel to New York with her laptop to take the bar. So all of that was happening. So I ended up sleeping several nights in the law school while studying for the bar. Several nights. Feeling like I was going crazy. Feeling like, so at the time, so going back, hearkening back to what I shared about Professor Murray, by the time I saw her, all of these things had happened. And when I saw her, I just broke down. And because it just felt so heavy. It felt so heavy. And at the time, I remember one day I went to church while I was studying for the bar. And I can't to this day recall what the sermon particularly was, but I do remember there was this woman, her name was Lenitra Williams. And she ended up coming to me out of nowhere. She was like, "How are you?" And I was like, "I mean, I'm okay." She, very discerning, she was like, "No, seriously, how are you?" And I remember just like breaking down and then she ended up praying for me. She took me out to brunch. The next few months studying for the bar, she supported me, fed me, all that great stuff, checked in on me, prayed for me. And I ended up, going to New York still with this significant chest pain, not knowing whether it was lupus or what have you. Going to New York City, I ended up actually taking the bar in Albany because I wanted to reconnect with the people that I went to school with at SUNY Albany. And again, walking around the bar exam space like it was the walls of Jericho, walking around it and saying, "I'm gonna pass this. I'm gonna pass this."
Even with everything going on.
Took the bar. Didn't find out the results until October and ended up passing it. Ended up passing it. But that was a really, really defining moment for me.
Yeah.
Like I can overcome very, very difficult things.
Man.
It was probably one of the hardest moments of my life. Went back to California, said thank you to Lenitra, said thank you to everyone. Ended up actually taking Lenitra to a Beyonce concert. We celebrated.
Nice.
And then ended up going with my friend Khadija to Brazil because that was my bar trip. But it was a really, really defining moment in my life. And I think a lot of my tenacity and determination was honed during that experience.
Yeah. Amazing, man. I don't think people recognize the sacrifices and things people go through while in law school, while taking the bar. Like, I always tell people, just be kind to people, not just in law school, but obviously because we're in the profession, but be kind to these law students and be kind to the people around you because you have no clue what's going on and the things that we're sacrificing to get to this thing we've been working for all our lives, trying to get over this hump. Man, I'm glad you made it through. I'm glad you're here, man. Like,
Me too.
That's amazing. That's amazing.
Me too.
Yeah. So what was your welcome to the legal field experience? You passed the bar, you're now a lawyer. What's something that happened that you were like, "Oh damn, I'm really a lawyer now." Like, this is crazy.
I think it came during my clerkship, my federal clerkship. So, as I noted, I clerked for an Obama-appointed federal judge, which for listeners who don't necessarily know what that is, I like to say it's like a ghostwriter for an attorney, for a judge.
That's good. Yeah.
You are not necessarily seen, but you are definitely heard. In the sense of the cases come before the court. You are drafting oftentimes the first drafts of the opinions. You are doing the legal research or bringing it to the judge. assuming they sign off on it after a bevy of edits, what you write ultimately becomes law.
Yeah.
So I ended up applying for a clerkship because it was like the thing to do at Berkeley. Like people were like, "Oh, did you apply yet?" I'm like, "What is that?" So like, what's a clerkship? And it was the professors that I had mentioned earlier, Professor Murray, Professor Smith, Professor Russell K. Robinson, who really was like, no, actually, you're kind of good at these like federalism, constitutional law classes. Like that's kind of your jam. You should apply. So I ended up applying, getting a few offers. I ended up going with one in California in the federal court system. And the first year felt like an absolute imposter. I was the only black clerk in the Eastern District of California in that cohort, in that period, and just feeling like totally just like a fish out of water, feeling like, oh my God, what did I sign myself up for? At the time I was completing my federal clerkship, it was the Hillary versus Trump campaign. And if you know anything about a clerkship, you can't speak on anything politically. You can't. I could not go to any protests. I couldn't go to any town halls. I couldn't go to any political events. And this was probably one of the historical ones of our lives. And to feel like I could not speak on these things was, it felt very isolating, very, very isolating. So I had a really, really difficult time my first year of my clerkship. I didn't really understand, and it wasn't as if I lacked the work ethic. I just didn't understand the work ethic that was required. I was like, oh, we really got to be here until like 11, like every night. Oh, for real. For real. Like I can't just like, write this the day before. Right. Oh,
I can do this at home. I don't gotta be here.
I gotta like research, nigga. What? Like it was just like, whoa. Yeah. And I remember because I hadn't really leaned into that really, really, really deep research, legal side of me, just feeling like I can't do this. And again, remember, I wanted to be a lawyer since I was 5. So at that point I was like, well, if I can't be that, what can I be? And it was a really dark time in my life. I ended up having suicidal ideations. I ended up, being checked into the hospital. It was a really dark time. Man. But I remember when I was in the hospital one day, I was waiting for a bed. And the moment my head hit the pillow, God said, you're not supposed to be here. I didn't bring you this far to take you this far. Man. And that moment reflected the upward trajectory of my career. Because it was just like, oh, you actually continue to trust me with this calling. Okay. So maybe I should actually do the work. Maybe I should actually lean into it. And less than a month later, I remember my judge walking into my office and saying, Ruky, you are doing a really, really great job. And mind you,
it means a lot, yeah.
My judge, I respect her so much. She is the reason why my work ethic is the way it is. She don't play. She does not play. Like we were oftentimes the first clerks in the courthouse, the last clerks to leave. I have a huge, huge amount of respect for her. So for her to say I was doing a good job or a great job meant the world. And as a result of the hard work and the long hours that I put in, including going to like one of the senior clerks and being very humble and saying, I need you to teach me how to walk. Like that, like y'all trying to have me run. I need you to teach me how to walk.
Right, yeah.
And just like going back to the basics of legal research, of Westlaw, of law, of LexisNexis, of reading court cases, of understanding precedent, of all that stuff. I started to really enjoy the law. Because I was like, oh, this is actually kind of fun. Okay.
That's
so
how
like,
it works, yeah.
It's crazy. It's wow. Yeah. I didn't know that. And it was at that point, I remember there was this one case that I wrote the opinion to, and the judge pretty much signed off on it with minimal edits. And I was like, I'm a lawyer. What's up? Esquire.
I can actually do this. I can actually do this thing. Yeah.
Talk to me.
Yeah, talk to me
But
nice.
don't tell your cousin to call me. Because I'm still not a criminal attorney, okay?
Yo. So I find it interesting, like, someone with your resume up until that clerkship is amazing. What made you, why do you think that you still had these doubts and these fears and these anxiety, even though you had a proven track record that you can kill it? That's like, I'm amazing.
Because imposter syndrome is ghetto.
It's their fault.
It's like imposter syndrome will have you believing that despite your receipts being as long as CVS.
Yo, CVS receipts be crazy
Obnoxious.
for no reason.
Why? I don't need this. I don't need this 20%
5
off of
cents.
shampoo. Why? But anyways, despite your receipts being as long as CVS.
Right.
Like, imposter syndrome will tell you you're still not worth it. You are still acting. You're still doing this.
Yeah.
And I think it was a combination of a lot of things. Again, I grew up in the projects of Brooklyn, New York, where oftentimes there was more month than money. Yeah. You saw a lot of people killed around you. Yeah. You saw a lot of gang violence. You saw a lot of just like the grime, grime of New York. And to have survived that and have had the opportunity to navigate the spaces that I was in, it gave me a lot of survivor's guilt. And a lot of the trauma associated with growing up, I hadn't up until that point unpacked it. So when the things that got you to a certain point won't get you to the next point, there has to be a shift. And I didn't know how to make that shift. Yeah. And a lot of my growth I attribute to therapy. A lot of my growth I attribute to my faith. And a lot of my growth I attribute to my anxiety medication. Like, when you overcome a lot of traumatic events, like Berkley was not the only traumatic event that I had gone, like the passing the bar exam was not that was one of many. Man. And when you finish that, you end up with like a lot of battle wounds and a lot of questions about how to unpack it. So I think there was still a lot of, okay, my anxiety is getting the best of me right now. And I actually don't know. Like, I remember just feeling like an out-of-body experience at many points when I was in my clerkship, because I was like, I don't know how I got here. And any memory of my competency went out the window. It was like, what? Like, why am I here? Yeah. Until
it doesn't help that, and it doesn't help that you're sometimes the only person that looks like you. Absolutely. In those spaces. So like,
and the only person that, like, and I'm a pretty colorful personality too. Like, so like, you're going to know very quickly that I'm an African American. So so it's
and then sometimes feeling like you're too much of a personality in these spaces. It's
absolutely.
Too calm down. Like, should I be acting like my? Yeah,
absolutely. So like, even race aside, I'm just like very colorful personality. Yeah. So this idea that I had to act a certain way in order to qualify as an attorney was also very jarring and very mystifying.
Yeah, man, that's real. That's real. So people don't even know yet. What do you do now? So you made your federal clerkship. What does Ruky do now?
So I'm the founder of a virtual law firm called Firm for the Culture. Okay. Firm for the Culture is a dynamic law firm designed to help social entrepreneurs and diverse founders create revenue generating social impact through intellectual property protection, through trademark protection, copyright protection, and IP licensing. And we do this work really to center the experiences of diverse founders and social entrepreneurs in the story of intellectual property, to make them see themselves in that story, and to also help them create generational wealth through leveraging the diverse contributions that they make to the culture.
What is a social entrepreneur?
So there are a myriad of definitions on the internet, but my definition is somebody who is intentional about bringing good into a community that they navigate. notwithstanding whether it's for profit or a non-for-profit. So if you have an intention to increase diversity in the STEM field, if you have an intention to create sustainable options for people all around the world when it comes to driving a car
Mm-hmm.
or navigating electricity or purchasing
Mm-hmm.
NFTs,
Mm-hmm.
like if you have some idea or vision for bringing a level of meaningful good into the world or your
Mm-hmm.
community, I believe that's social impact.
Nice. And say you focus on intellectual property, trademarks, copyright. What made you focus in on that area of law?
So during my clerkship, I had the
Mhm.
opportunity to work on an IP matter,
Nice.
and I just loved how scientific it was. I don't know, for lack
Mm,
of a better term. So growing up in junior high school, and I kind of left that behind. I had loved math. I had loved
mm.
chemistry.
The one
Um,
lawyer who likes math.
You are too funny. But I love math. I love chemistry. But I left that behind because they don't really teach that to you. And
Yeah.
that wasn't a prerequisite for me getting my degrees in political science and
Right.
Africana studies. So I kind of left that behind. So when I had reacquainted myself with like math and science and hard, I guess hard sciences, whatever you may call it,
Mm-hmm.
I really liked it and I loved the challenge. So when I ended up getting my job at the law firm Coin Emanuel, I ended up working in the Silicon Valley and working almost exclusively on intellectual property cases,
Mm-hmm.
copyright, trade secrets, patents, trademarks. Like it was what I worked on. And I enjoyed it. I enjoyed just learning all of these new fields. And I didn't have a science background. So to feel like I could still navigate this space
Yeah.
effectively was really, really amazing to me. So, but one of the things I noticed over and over and over again is that when it came to representing our clients or when it came to talking about IP, we our clients didn't look like you and I. They didn't look like
Mm-hmm.
me and you. So that was very jarring to me because I said, like, if there's any community that's creative,
Mm-hmm.
it's us.
Right.
Okay.
Right. Right.
So why aren't we being put in as part of the story around intellectual property? And it was at that point that I decided, okay, I'm gonna kind of start my own thing, and I'm
That's
not
dope, man.
gonna, hide what it's for. It's firm for the
Mm-hmm.
culture.
Yeah, I
So
love the name. It's straight to
thank
the
you.
point. Let's do it.
Federally trademark. Don't try to.
Okay, go take it. That's all. Yeah, that's all you. But so to take it back, h- what's a typical? Say you're at the firm. What's a typical case like? Like you get a case packet, get a case file. What is it? Is it like there's some documents you got to read over and you write something up? Like people don't really know. Like what does an IP attorney do in a day? Like what is that? How does that look?
So there's so many different parts of it, but
Yeah.
particularly for me, there are two priorities when it comes to working with my clients: knowing the law,
Mm-hmm.
like obviously,
Mm-hmm.
like really, really knowing the law, like backwards and forwards, because when you are part of a firm like Firm for the Culture,
Mm-hmm.
you may get questions a lot as to whether you know the law. So
Mm,
making sure that I actually understand the law, understand the case law, can be seen as a thought leader in intellectual property is really, really important to me. So I really
yeah.
do study the law.
Good.
Second, making sure my clients feel like they have a place in this space.
Mm,
So a lot of what I'm doing is really crafting an ecosystem in which they feel valued.
mm,
So oftentimes my team and I are looking over our questionnaires. We're looking over our meeting agenda. We're looking over the priorities that we set and we say, is this understandable? Can we
mm.
translate this to be understood more by our clients? Because at this point we have over 250 clients
Nice.
and a 95% win rate at the USPTO. So
Awesome.
we just want to make sure that our clients from all different backgrounds, we have very, very diverse clients from like, the tech bros from Silicon Valley to,
Mm-hmm.
the single moms from Brooklyn and Oakland. Like we have really,
Mm-hmm.
really amazing, diverse clients. Um, Making sure that all of them feel like their diverse contributions to the culture matter. So a lot of what I work on is just translating what is oftentimes seen as really esoteric, inaccessible legal jargon and saying, I know it says heretofore, but here's what it means. Let me just break it down to you. So that's much of the work I do.
Yeah. So explain to me trademark like I'm like a fifth grader.
Sure. So here's a trademark. Da 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 da. So that's a trademark. That's a trademark by 20th Century Fox. But what about this one? Finish the sentence for me. Ba-da-ba-ba-ba.
I'm loving it.
That's a trademark. So
okay, that's fun.
So a trademark at its core.
Let's do another one.
Oh gosh. Dun dun dun.
One. Dun, dun.
NBC.
Oh yes. Oh, okay. The little jingles. Okay.
So a trademark at its core is a form of intellectual property, a brain baby, as I like to call it, a manifestation of the mind in a way that's tangible and monetizable. The way I explain trademarks is trademarks allow two companies to sell the same exact thing at the same exact time to the same exact consumer in the same exact geographic location, as long as they have different brands, as long as they have different stories like Uber and Lyft. Trademarks allow distinct stories to matter. So a trademark at its core is the definition of the word. So it's a mark of your trade, a mark of your business. So when somebody sees your business, whether it's by your slogan, by your logo, by your name, by your jingle, they automatically associate it with you. So let's say I'm walking down the street and I have a coffee with a green and white mermaid on it. Circle in a circle, green and white mermaid. Where's that coffee from?
That Starbucks?
Yeah.
Okay.
Just in within a split second of you seeing that drawing, you know so much about the product that's in my hand. You know that the product in my hand costs way too damn much. You know you know that the product in my hand is from a company whose headquarters are in Seattle, Washington. You know the product in my hand, and you might assume some things about me as a result of the product in my hand. That's all as a result of the trademark, which demands consumer loyalty in certain circumstances. So because it's a trademark, it's important that your mark is not confusingly similar with another mark, because that consumer loyalty ain't always loyal.
That's real. Same thing with the swoop, the Nike check mark.
Exactly, the Nike check mark.
Adidas sign. Yeah. That's so interesting. So while I was doing my research, I saw you speak about Eminem's new trademark suit against the housewives of the reasonably shady.
Yeah, reasonably shady versus Slim Shady.
Right. I find that so interesting because while we are supposed to protect our brands, at what point does it become like, all right, you just wilding now? Like it ain't that close. Because I guess for me, when you ask people to vote to see if he had a thing, and I'm like, I don't know if he has a claim for real. Because reasonably shady. I'm like, nobody can use the word shady anymore because you feel like that's associated with you. Like, how do you draw the line? Where do you feel like the line is drawn?
It's an argument. It's definitely an argument, but the overarching standard in trademark law is the likelihood of confusion standard, which essentially stands for the proposition that even if two brands don't look the same, sound the same, sometimes even taste the same, some trademarks can be tasted, like think of the cotton candy crepe, so that's a trademark, or have the same color. Think of the red under Louboutin shoes, or the pink that was splashed all around everything during the Barbie movie premiere. That's actually that color is a trademark. So
I saw that.
Even if those things
Pepsi
are not
Coke,
necessarily the same, there can still be a level of consumer confusion if there is a similarity in what's called commercial impression. So the question around Slim Shady versus reasonably shady really comes down to whether consumers, when looking at reasonably shady, would associate it in some unfair way with Eminem. And because, think about it from Eminem's point of view, he has been a artist for over 2 decades at this point. He has worked his behind off to have the name Slim Shady, and you have the Housewives of Potomac come on and take this name in a field where, you know, it may not necessarily be taken by everybody. So he's saying, I need to protect my brand. I need to protect the thing that I work so hard for. So I'm going to stop you. Now, like everything else, it's an argument. It's an argument as to whether consumers are going to be confused, whether consumers are likely to give, you know, the host of Reasonably Shady money because of its association, however false, with Slim Shady. Whether Slim Shady or Eminem's brand is going to be seen as less valuable because of Reasonably Shady. So there's a lot of considerations that are made before somebody like Eminem goes out and says, hey, you can't use this brand.
Man. Wow. How are these things like argued in court? Because I'm in criminal law, so it's like this is the criminal statute. These are the actions that this defendant took, and here's how it matches up with this criminal statute. I feel like when it comes to trademarking ideas, it's so much harder to like express them on a piece of paper or even express them in court as an attorney. Do you find that difficult at all? Or?
At first I did, but I think it, you know, when you really dive into the creativity, it becomes really, really fun. The more experience I've gotten in trademark law, the more creative I've been able to be and to argue what could be seen as really, really, really difficult cases. So there is a huge concept in trademark law called the DuPont case or the DuPont factors. And it's a series of about 13 factors which determine as a matter of law whether something is confusingly similar, like whether two brands are confusingly similar. And amongst other things, you know, the factors include the similarity in name or spelling, and then the similarity in goods and services, because it's entirely possible that two brands can be exactly the same, like exactly the same, and not cause consumer confusion. Think about Dove chocolate and Dove soap. Think about Lowe's Home Improvement and Lowe's Movie Theater, or Pandora Radio versus Pandora Jewelry, right? So it's entirely possible that two brands can be exactly the same without causing consumer confusion, but it largely depends on the same, amongst other things. Again, there's at least, 11 other factors, but the first two, similarity of the name and the brand, and then similarity of the goods and services. And then it gets a little bit more complex as you go along. But those are really, that Supreme Court case is really the touchstone case by which a lot of us as trademark attorneys argue whether two brands are similar or not similar.
So you're saying the reason why these brands are able to coexist is because they had pretty good lawyers to argue why.
Well, not necessarily. Not necessarily. It's not often the case. It's not always the case that the brands are able to coexist simply because they had really good lawyers. They're able to coexist because they don't cause confusion. Like, you're not going to the chocolate aisle looking for Dove soap. Like you're just not. And if you are, then we may have to pray over you. But like, you're not doing that. Like, so it's like when I first filed a trademark for Firm for the Culture, for instance, there were other, like, Firm for the Culture is not Firm for the Culture, but For the Culture is not an original name. And in fact, there was a trademark called Por la Cultura, which is For the Culture in Spanish. Now, there's a concept in trademark law called the foreign equivalent doctrine that essentially says that if your mark, when translated into another language, is similar to another mark that's currently registered or is a prior pending mark, then your mark could still be seen as confusingly similar. So your girl was scared because I was like, I'm trying to do this. trying to do this for the culture, all that stuff. But I was able to argue that because my services are very, very niched, like legal services are like, you have to go through a lot of schooling in order to become a lawyer. Legal services are typically not like grab off the shelf items like you would a shampoo at CVS. So the likelihood of confusion is not as probable, I was essentially able to successfully defend a firm for the culture and ultimately get a federally registered trademark. But
it's amazing.
It's an argument.
Yeah. What would you say is the most interesting case you've worked on?
Well, attorney-client privilege is real.
Yes, without any names.
A couple. I've worked with really, really high-end celebrities.
Mm-hmm.
I have worked with really, really huge influencers against really, really high-end celebrities. So, it's been this whole experience, because I'm going on 5 years now, this whole experience has just been a really, really awesome experience because people are really resonating with the way my firm and my team do law, the way we do law, the way we talk about law, the way we center the culture in our legal stories. So I've constantly been surprised that there have been huge celebrities who have reached out to us and said, we want you to handle our IP. And I'm like, I bet. I got you.
Wow. There's no imposter syndrome that comes up now when that happens.
I mean, yeah, I think I don't know if it'll ever go away, but I do believe that I will always have, as long as I'm navigating my calling, I will always have to be in a position in which I pursue God.
Yeah.
In which I pursue the Holy Spirit, in which I really continue to get grounded.
Yeah.
So, if I'm not feeling nervous, then that might give me a little bit of anxiety.
No, I feel you, man. So just to touch on real quick, you said that you almost quit the entire profession. Why did you almost quit? Why did you almost leave us in the legal field?
Again, I think it's because I didn't see lawyers who looked like me. I didn't see lawyers who were really talking about law in the way I was talking about. Like, as much as I love the law, you're not going to catch me every single day reading case law books. Like, I'm just, like, I kind of just want to go watch rap shit, or I kind of just want to watch Insecure. Like, so because I wasn't, especially with the spaces I've navigated, because I just wasn't that person that was always just like sitting down, burrowed in a corner, reading law books, it felt very, very weird for me to say, oh, I'm what a lawyer looks like, when in my mind, I wasn't what a lawyer looked like. And in the society's mind, I wasn't what a lawyer looked like.
As if you weren't as dedicated because you didn't do these things, because you didn't act in a certain way, you must not be as dedicated to the law as other people, you thought.
I think it's because I looked at the law in a different way. Because I had interpretations of the law that to many in the status quo seemed unreasonable. I oftentimes had my competency questioned.
The segment before the last segment, do you have any hot takes, any legal profession hot takes, something that you would change, something that you think about the profession that people don't really think about? Any hot takes? I'll give an example. People will say like law school should only be 1 year.
Nah, I'm gonna need it to be all 3 years, homie. But
this is an example.
All three. I think that lawyers should stop being afraid of letting their personality shine. It's interesting. As a person who came from corporate America now, I have a lot of friends who are still in corporate, people who are becoming partners at some of the biggest law firms in the country. And sometimes when I have lunch with them or I talk with them, I feel like I'm in like a confessional where they are confiding in me and saying, I'm about to like I'm about to blow this whole place up. And I'm like, no, don't do that. So like, it's just very, I think the legal field, as much as I love it, as much as I appreciate it, as much as it made me who I am, it still has a ways to go. And I think a lot, like obviously there's racism, obviously there's implicit biases, explicit biases, all that stuff.
Yeah.
But I do think that lawyers, especially when it comes to our relationships with our clients, we would go a far, far way if we leaned a little bit more into our authenticity.
Man, that's real. And I feel like you have to pull that back or dial that down. And that's something I'm navigating too. Like I said, being fresh in here, it's like understanding, I guess, professionalism, what that means or who defines that, but also being true to myself and also being authentically me and knowing that I don't have to like dim it down for anybody or care about what people may say. It's hard because again in law school you're already being ingrained into this certain lifestyle, this certain community. You're seeing when you intern or you clerk, you're seeing how lawyers are supposed to act, and now that you have the autonomy and the freedom as an actual lawyer, you're like, oh, should I act like them or can I just be me? This whole time I've been seeing how other people acted. I didn't know I could actually be myself in this space. So,
absolutely.
Yeah. All right. So the final segment of the conversation show is the closing argument. I'm
Lord
sure
have
you've
mercy.
seen a lot of these as a clerk. You see a lot of closing arguments take place.
Oh,
so
Lord.
You should be fine.
Sure.
The closing argument section is basically you're leaving the audience with a gem. The Conversate podcast is for law students and baby lawyers. So leave us with a word of encouragement or a little sermon or a little song. You could sing for us. I don't know if you want a little special for us.
You
but
can
you have
find me on
use...
YouTube to sing. But
okay. But you have to use the word of the day. And the word of the day is bereft. Bereft. And I cannot tell you the definition.
I know what bereft means. You're fine.
I'm sorry, Berkley. I'm sorry.
You're fine. You're bereft of knowledge about me. Okay. Okay.
Come on, Berkley.
Okay. So bereft. You may be bereft of feelings that you are good enough, that you are strong enough, that you are enough. But I promise you, if you are called to this space, you are equipped to navigate this space. And you also may see that you may be in the in-between where you used to be and not necessarily where you want to be. But keep going. God is working.
Hey, amazing. Thank you. You bereft perfectly. Bereft means deprived of or lacking.
Thank you.
It's for the audience, not for you.
Of course,
Since you know what the definition is.
Of course. Absolutely.
Thank you so much for being on the podcast, Ruky. This was amazing. Your story was amazing. It encouraged me. The things that you've been through, the things that you've accomplished, it was not all for nothing. It means something, especially for you and especially for the people who are listening. Like, your story is a testimony in and of itself. So I'm so glad you made it to do these things to be on this podcast. And I'm so glad you made those things just for you and to build the rest of your life. So thank you. And all the best to you and your career, man.
Well, thank you, Akeem. Thank you for having this space. It's a space that I definitely wish I had when I was in law school. So I'm so happy that young attorneys and law students alike have this.